an allocution statement. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you make an allocution statement, you will not be under oath?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you make an allocution statement, you will not be cross-examined?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you want to make an allocution statement, no one can prevent you from doing so?
Yes.
Do you understand that you do not have to make an allocution statement and no one can require that you make a statement?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you decide not to make an allocution statement, that cannot harm you in any way or work against you in any way?
Yes.
Have you consulted with your attorneys concerning this issue?
Yes.
And do you need more time to speak to them about this?
No.
Are you satisfied with the advice of your attorneys concerning this particular issue?
Yes.
And I've given you this advisement a few times in this case. You understand the advisement and you understand specifically what the right to make an allocution statement is that correct?
Yes.
And you also understand your right to not make an allocution statement, is that correct?
Yes.
Whether or not you give an allocution statement is your personal choice. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Although you may have consulted with your attorneys and they may have given you advice on this issue, do you understand that whether or not you give an allocution statement is your choice and not your attorney's choice?
Yes.
Whatever your decision is it your free and voluntary and intelligent decision and your own personal decision?
Yes.
Do you have any questions of the court before I ask you for your decision?
No.
And what is your decision in terms of whether you wish to make an allocution statement?
Not to make that statement.
So you do not want to make an allocution statement, is that correct?
Yes.
Any additional advisement that the people are asking me to provide?
No, sir, thank you.
Any additional advisement that the defense is asking me to provide?
No, Your Honor.
All right, it's 10 till 5, so we can either proceed with counsel's comments or we can take a break for the day and then proceed fresh tomorrow morning. What's your preference, Mr. Brockler?
Your Honor, I don't think I need more than 10 or so minutes to wrap up.
Do you prefer to go to proceed now then?
I'd just as soon do it now, Your Honor, and try to get this thing behind us as quickly as we can.
Okay, Mr. King, is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, all right, Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
The maximum sentence for the maximum evil, Your Honor. What that guy did, he should not be spared 1 year, 1 month, 1 day of what the maximum available sentence is. That was the approach I took in seeking death over 2 years ago. And the court has touched upon this, victims certainly have touched upon this, and even though I don't want to go into on the record here the reasons for the decision nor the reasons for the rejection of the qualified plea bargain that we received, I'm happy to do that outside this courtroom, and I have done that liberally and without exception. But I do want to say this about the system. I am disappointed in the outcome. I don't think that's going to be a surprise to anyone. I remain disappointed. I remain convinced that death is the appropriate sentence. But equally, I am convinced that this jury's verdict must be respected and it must be honored. And this is the system that we must have when the government seeks to take the life of another one of its citizens. I believe that. It should not be easy. It should be hard. And having said that, I believe that the outcome of the jury has been characterized as the jury sentenced him to life, and it may be the function of law, but they did not pick life. It was because they could not be unanimous, as the law requires. And in that regard, whatever mercy should be extended to the defendant for whatever claims of mental illness that have been advanced and testified to here in court, they have been accounted for. So the question is, what is there about this case that would suggest that the defendant should be given 1 year, 1 month, 1 day less than the maximum available? We've done math on this. And it's our belief, and obviously Your Honor's math is going to prove to be the one that's more persuasive, and that is that this guy has to be sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences plus a minimum of 1,072 years up to a maximum of 3,318 years. And after you hear the phrase 12 consecutive life sentences, I think the public has asked the question, and I know victims have, what difference can it possibly make? I mean, short of actually including cryogenesis, this guy's never, ever going to take a free breath again. That's the way it looks. Why do we go through this process? And the court touched upon it. But I think it's important, and the reason I ask for the maximum possible sentence here is that these people and the hundreds of others that have not been able to be here and have not been able to direct their comments to you in person, they're entitled to recognition for what has happened to them. They're entitled to weight, the weight of the law and the weight of an appropriate sentence for what has happened to them. And he too is also entitled to wear for the rest of his life the weight of his evil conduct. And that is the maximum possible sentence in this case. Not 1 year, not 1 month, not 1 day less than the maximum. The reason I know my comments aren't going to be lengthy is because I worry about cheapening the legitimacy, the sincerity of what we have heard here over the past 2 days, what we heard during phase 3 of the sentencing. My guess is we've seen but the tip of that iceberg, that we are standing on the edge of a black hole that we can only look into, and thank God for that, because it seems to be bottomless and it seems to be filled with nothing but pain. Now, this court can give a number of years. It can sentence the defendant to the Department of Corrections. But the law has deprived this court of the ability to do other things that I would like to ask it to do. I would like it to be able to sentence this guy to solitary confinement, what we would call administrative segregation. The court cannot. I'd like to ask this court to order that every day of his existence from this moment forward be in a room filled with the pictures of those whose lives he took or ruined, and yet the court cannot. I can't even ask this court to sentence him to not laugh or be happy or to develop friendships or relationships because he's not on death row. This is a guy who could get married again. He could, quote unquote, earn his way to medium level security in prison. And this court cannot sentence him otherwise. It can't sentence him to even be uncomfortable or miserable. The Department of Corrections will rush to address every physical malady, every boo-boo that this guy has instantly. All that we can do in this room is to sentence him to the Department of Corrections for a period of time. You know, because he's not on death row, the defendant can be transferred out of state, and the Department of Corrections loses the ability to influence or dictate what the privileges he may have or not have would be in whatever state he goes to. In fact, there's no limitation on the Department of Corrections sending him to California, where he might have increased contact with his family members or people that still care about him. Not for these folks. They don't get that. So what we have is a period of time that the court can sentence him to. It is ironic, I think, Your Honor, that when death walked into theater number 9 back in the early morning hours of July 20th, 2012, that this guy attempted to murder everything that he lacked and everything that he wasn't. Courage, bravery, selflessness, the stories of the victims that we have heard who tried to save other people's lives over their own, taken by a guy who took Vicodin because he couldn't stomach the idea of feeling a moment of pain after trying to massacre hundreds. Friendships, happiness, meaningful relationships with parents, success in school, optimism about life. All of these things that he killed or tried to kill, these things that he stole from these people back here, were the things he lacked in his own life. And all we can do is now sentence him to a period of time. Whatever role mental illness played in here, we can be certain that the jury, and quickly, dismissed the idea that he was insane. It moved quickly past the idea that whatever the mental illness was, it outweighed the aggravation of the evil that he committed. And what we know is that mental illness and evil are not mutually exclusive. I think in evaluating what this case is in terms of a sentence, I'd ask the court to consider what might have been. What might have been. When he leaves his apartment on July 19th, 2012, the court well knows, he wants someone to come into that apartment or to set it off. Whether it's an explosion or a fire or both. It is his dream, his hope, his fantasy, his goal, his plan, that that apartment and the people in it go up in flames. He's taken the extra step of putting magnesium on the carpet to thwart anyone who might put water on that fire to try to put it out. And he does it perhaps to hurt others, but it appears to try to distract and delay the first responders, the lifesavers, the heroes, from going to the place where he was prepared to kill not 12 plus 70, but every human being in Theater 9. 700 rounds, steel penetrator rounds, a 12-gauge shotgun, not a 20, a 12-gauge shotgun, 2 handguns, an assault rifle with a 100-round magazine. And as I told this jury, he stopped killing when he lost the ability to kill. He stopped pulling that trigger when the trigger stopped working. What might have been is a trial that would have made this seem like a long weekend. A trial where the pictures that are displayed in PowerPoint would be in the hundreds. A sentencing hearing, whatever that may look like, that would have taken weeks. That's what was in his heart, and that's what was in his head when death came into Theater number 9 on July 20th. But it's not hard also, in light of what we have heard from these good, innocent people, what might have been. And when you look out there, Judge, when you see them at the podium, you have to see the things that he stole from them. The daughters that will walk down the aisle without a dad. The grandmothers without grandchildren in their arms because they were never born. The empty seats at the theater or in Vegas. The missing servicemen and women. The people who would have made such a difference in our lives. Maybe even a politician. A good one, though, for the Larimers, a good one. What might have been has to come into consideration here. Some will ask, 1,072, 3,318, what difference can it make? It does, Judge. Even if it were just symbolically. But I think it's more than that. This guy right here has received all the mercy from this system to which he can claim entitlement. He should leave here with the maximum sentence that the law can give. Because for these people, what he did, they're not going to be spared 1 year, 1 month, or 1 day. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King?
Your Honor, I am not going to make a recommendation about what sentence this court should impose. We respect this jury. We respect this jury's verdict. It appears that this jury worked very, very hard and gave their hearts and voted their conscience, which is their right, their duty, and their obligation under the law when they swore the oath that they swore. We most humbly respect the suffering and the opinions of the victims in this case. It pains us beyond measure that some of these folks may perceive any of our actions as being directed against them in any way at all. It has never been our intention to re-harm, re-injure, or re-traumatize anyone. In that regard, we did everything that we legally and ethically could do prior to the beginning of this trial to try to reach a resolution that wouldn't require a trial, up to and including offering to plead guilty to all the counts and accept a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, the same sentence that Mr. Holmes is going to serve right now. Those efforts were rejected. We're sorry if anything we did re-harmed anyone. We hope that these victims can find some measure of peace and some measure of closure. And because of the jury's verdict, we can now make one small announcement that may help in that regard. We will not be seeking an appeal in this case. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, it's 5:07, so let's go ahead and break for the day. Let's have everybody back at 9 tomorrow morning. All right, the court will be in recess. Thank you.
Please rise. You need to say the term, come on.